This is a podcast about one woman's mission to help entrepreneurs and business owners write better business books. Each week, we tackle your writing excuses, because there are excuses too, and help you beat the blank page of doom so that you can write the book that'll grow your life and your business. Now here's your host, Vicky Fraser.
Hello and welcome to Notes in the Margin. Oh yes, we've finally changed the name so that... What do you mean what?
What?
Well, because my email newsletter, which you can sign up by going to moxiebooks.co.uk/notes in the margin, and I think there's like hyphens between those words. But yeah, well, that's my thing. It's Notes in the Margin.
Notes in the Margin.
Yeah, and so like the $1,000 show made sense for a bit, but honestly, it doesn't anymore.
Blimey, okay.
I'm tying it all together.
Okay.
So yeah, I am Vicky Quinn Fraser, and this is my husband Joe.
Hello.
Hello.
We're going to need to work on the intro.
Well, I mean, to be fair, we need to work on all of it.
Yeah, you'd think after 300 odd episodes we'd be all right at this.
This is episode 316.
It's ridiculous.
316.
I mean, is it though? If you change the title, do you not go back to one?
No.
Okay, fine.
No, absolutely not. Because otherwise I'd have to, there's all sorts of SEO stuff and people who've subscribed to it. If I change it to a brand new podcast, then I lose all of that and that'll be ridiculous. It's
cool.
Like the reason that you never get rid of old blog posts and things.
Yeah.
Because they're indexed and they get traffic and...
So people who've subscribed, hello.
Hello.
They stay subscribed even if you change the name?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because the kind of all of the feeds stay the same. I don't know how it works. Podfly sort it out because they're clever.
Thanks, Podfly.
Thanks.
Do they know?
Yes, they do know this. Actually, we need to record a new... people might be listening to this and be like, no, you don't. You've done it. But we need to record a new intro, little bit of speaky stuff at the beginning.
Cool.
I might just do that myself.
Who did it before?
You did it.
Okay,
but you put on this radio voice and, you did a lovely job and everything, but I wanted you to do it because I wanted you to sound like you. But when you did it, you read it very, very carefully and you didn't really sound like you anymore.
Ah. You could have asked me to do it again with a bit more,
I know, but I just wanted it done. And it was good enough. Good
enough for 150 episodes. Move on.
Yeah. So no, it was great. It was great. Oh no, now I feel bad.
Yeah. Well, if I'd known it was rubbish, I would have done it again.
Oh my god, it wasn't rubbish. It was not rubbish. Did I say point to where I said it was rubbish? Don't hear what I'm not saying.
Well,
you are hearing what I'm not saying.
I am.
Yes. Okay. So, what are you reading?
Oh God, I'm reading The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman, and I'm reading it mostly because I was abroad last week.
Denmark, the most expensive place in the world.
Denmark, really expensive, doing engineering-y things. And I finished the book I was reading, which was the Dictionary of Lost Words.
Yeah,
which was great.
Yes.
But I needed a book, so I had to buy a book, and I bought an airport book, and it's kind of cozy murder mystery type stuff.
Is it really good? You said it was good.
Yeah, it's very light. It's entertaining and it's nice, but it's quite light.
Okay, well that's good.
That's fine.
Well, that's good. Cool.
What are you reading?
I'm reading Around India in 80 Trains by Manisha Rajesh.
Okay.
Because I loved Around the World in 80 Trains, and Around India in 80 Trains is her first book. So I was like, I'm going to go back and read the first one. And it's making me really want to visit India.
Okay.
It really makes me want to visit India. She just writes beautifully about, and just really, she just does a really good job of describing what it's like. And it just makes me want to go. So, and she's very funny, and yeah, it's just great. And the one thing that I think she could add, and this is something that you said, frustrated you a little bit, was that the beginning of each chapter could do with a little map of where the train was going, because India is freaking massive. And
one place I've never heard of. Yeah, starting in one place I've never heard of and going to a place I've never heard of.
Yeah,
it's difficult to.
And she does have
conceptualize that.
Yeah, she does have a map right at the beginning with numbers on it for all of the trains that they took, which is great. But there was quite a lot of backwards, so it wasn't just in a big loop around India. It's quite a lot backwards and forwards. And I think you're right. I think it would be really lovely to have, and she wouldn't have had much control over any of this because the publishers decide what they're going to do, but it would have been really great if at the beginning of each chapter, because I think each chapter was a train or a couple of trains per chapter.
Yeah.
And it would have been really cool to have had that bit of the map there, just so that you could get a bit more of a sense of
whereabouts you are.
Yeah, and also how big it is as well, because like one of the trains was like a 48-hour train journey, and it's like 2,000 kilometers, and it's like, and that's only a portion of India, and it's like, oh, it's just massive. It's a massive place. And yeah, so, and she also does a really good job of like really giving a sense of how different all of the different areas are, because I think we tend to, in the West, we tend to be like, oh, India is a place. And it's like, it's not. It's like a dozen places. It's in the same way that, in England is one part of the UK, and then you've got Scotland and Wales and Ireland, which are all Northern Ireland, and then Ireland, which is kind of joined on, which is all
separate stuff.
Yeah, all separate stuff. And so yeah, it's just great. I really enjoy it. I'm also reading Good Pop, Bad Pop by Jarvis Cocker.
Okay.
Which is so great. So Jarvis Cocker, for those who don't know, is the frontman for Pulp, indie pop band from my teenage years. And Jarvis now does all sorts of other things. He just makes music on his own now and does radio broadcasting. And
yeah, he's a bit of a intellectual
he's just
chap
awesome.
about town, isn't he?
I just love him. So Pulp were one of my favourite bands as a teenager. I had like a handful of bands that I would just listen to.
Pulp or Blur?
All the time. Pulp.
Okay.
Blur were great, but Pulp, I just loved Pulp because I loved Jarvis's awkwardness and weirdness, and Blur were awesome, but they were always a little bit cool.
They were quite cool, yeah.
And Pulp they're just weird and quirky, and that's kind of what this book is about. It's a memoir. So I've got the hardback. It's beautiful. And it's just beautifully designed as well. So the premise behind it is Good Pop, Bad Pop, and inventory. I can't remember exactly what the subtitle is, but it's an inventory. And he started clearing out his loft, and that's what prompted him to write the book.
Just finding things and reigniting memories.
Yeah, and so he found like his notebooks from school, which is where he first started writing about. That's where he came up with the band name Pulp and all of the branding before he ever started writing music, and just how they wrote their first songs and how they did. It's basically a treatise on creativity and his creative process, and it's incredibly generous in that respect, and also really fascinating and funny and valuable and just interesting. It's just like, and I love the premise of writing a memoir based on shit you find in your attic and what that means to your life. And it's just because a memoir, this might turn into an entirely different podcast episode now, but like people get memoir and autobiography mixed up, or I think they don't always know the difference. And so autobiography is like, you might have an autobiography of Henry VIII, and it's like his life from birth to death.
Wouldn't that be a biography?
Biography, autobiography.
Unless you wrote
a biography.
Right.
Or an autobiography.
I mean, maybe he wrote one, I don't know.
I don't know. Probably not. He's too busy getting drunk and chopping women's heads off, I think. But yeah, so a biography or an autobiography is like your life from birth to death, and it's only a very few people can get away with that, because most people
you've got to be quite interesting for quite a long
you've got to be really
period,
famous. Yeah, so there's like biographies of various famous people and big figures in history, and that's fine. But a memoir is different, and so there's one autobiography because that's your life, but you can have like dozen memoirs.
So you could have a memoir from your university years, or a memoir from your childhood, or a memoir from your career, or a memoir from...
Yes and no. So yes, you could, but a memoir is more like your life, but with a theme to it. And so Jarvis Cocker's theme is his journey to Pulp, and his musical journey and his creative journey based on the things that he's found in his attic and jogging his memory and that kind of thing. So he's missed out like tons of his life, tons and tons of it. And his main theme is, what did I want to do with this? I wanted to share my creative journey and my creative process. And how am I going to do it? I'm going to do it by the vehicle of stuff that I found in my loft. So a memoir is a telling of part of your story, but with a theme. And it doesn't have to be like literally true. As in, I think, I can't remember the exact quote now, but the way I like to think of it is that you're digging out a truth about something without necessarily telling all of the details of the truth. So you don't have to repeat conversations word for word. And like quite often people who write memoirs will have their friends and family being like, well, I didn't say that. That's not exactly how it happened. And it's like, but
that's fine.
But
not
the
really
essence,
the point.
it's the essence of the truth that you're trying to get at that is important. And so it's almost like a fictionalized true story. If that makes sense. Anyway, but I also really love Good Pop, Bad Pop because it's beautifully illustrated as well, and the pages are really nicely designed. And so some of the like he's got like sections that are like, oh, I'm going to talk about this particular thing here, and all the pages are red, for example.
Okay.
And so it's just like interesting. It's not just like, oh, this is how a book should be. And the other thing I like about it is he never writes out the word and. He always uses an ampersand.
Okay.
And it's just like it's just one of his quirks, and it's just like, no, this is how I write, and therefore this is how it's going to be in the book. And this is another thing to note, by the way, about traditional publishing. Jarvis Cocker can do that with traditional publishers because he's Jarvis Cocker, and I will bet anything that he got a bit of pushback against that, and they would be like, oh, you can't do that because you got to write it out in full. I would not get away with that with a traditional publisher. They would be like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
But self-publishing my own book, I can do whatever the hell I like. So that is something to just bear in mind if you're thinking of publishing, traditional publishing, blah, blah, blah. And I know that there are fairly big names in the marketing industry who have traditionally published a book and now regret it.
Okay.
Or not so much regret it. They don't necessarily regret it, but they wouldn't do it again because of the loss of control. Anyway, so that was a little bit of a diversion.
It was, wasn't it? What are we talking about today?
Well, I don't know. I feel like that could be a whole episode. We done?
It could be. We need to talk about the dingle. What's going on?
We do. Oh my gosh. Well, I turned an old piece of dark wooden sideboard into a beautifully chalk painted bathroom vanity unit ready to mount sinks onto.
Yeah, we need to give it a bit of a varnish and change some knobs, but it looks nice.
It does, thanks. And we've got plastered walls in the bathroom and ceiling, and it looks amazing.
The ongoing saga of the bathroom.
Oh my gosh, but it actually feels like we'll have a bathroom by Christmas now.
Yeah. Feels like a nice room. We've got the sewerage in the plan. That's going to get done, which is nice because I didn't want to do that.
Nope, knocking a hole in a 3-foot wall.
Yep, and then plumbing it into underground drains. Ugh.
Oh, no, thank you.
No, thank you.
Pay someone to do that.
So yeah, it really does feel like a room, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Looks great.
So yes, we might do a whole episode on the bathroom at some point and do a video episode from the bathroom in the bath. Oh my gosh, we could do that.
In the bath?
In the bath, yeah.
Yeah. We could.
Yeah. Oh, it could be like my OnlyFans or something.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I gotta make my money, Joe. I gotta make my money. I think people are paid to see my boobs.
They probably would.
Yeah, I mean, they have done before.
That's true.
Yeah. So, anyway, Joe's making a face now. He's like, I've got paid for doing burlesque shows.
Yeah.
Right, so we are talking this week about creativity, and actually all of the stuff that we just talked about with Jarvis Cocker's memoir is entirely relevant because he's one of the people on my list. I just really wanted to make a few suggestions for getting inspiration and ideas and, following and watching and learning and stealing from people. I say stealing, ethical stealing from people that you might not otherwise have thought of.
Okay.
So I've just got like a basic list of people. I could just run through that list. It'd be really dull. But and there will be a full list of these people in the show notes. But I just wanted to pull out a few that stick in my mind. So on the writing side of things, let's do the writing side of things first. Nick Cave.
Nick Cave?
As in Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds.
Okay.
Love his music.
Mm-hmm.
Most people will probably know the theme tune to Peaky Blinders,
Red Hand Gang and all that.
Yeah, so that's the one that probably most people will know him for. But
you might also know the Kylie one.
Oh yeah, they call me
the Wandering Rose.
The Wild Rose.
Wild Rose.
Call me the Wild Rose. But my name's Eliza Jane. Eliza Day, yeah.
Eliza Day.
But yes, he is a magnificent songwriter and storyteller, and I really love his songwriting. I like the music, but his songwriting... His poetry, yeah, he's a poet. But he writes a regular email newsletter called The Red Hand Files that I've been getting for a few years now. And he just answers reader questions. So, for example, let's have a look at the one that I was reading this morning. It was number 200. And
Talk amongst yourselves.
no, here it is. So he had 2 questions. One of them was, so the next red hand file is number 200. What are the red hand files? I mean, what are you trying to do with them? By the way, I love them. They help. And then somebody else asked, I just feel so fucking empty, so hollow. What can I do? And his response was, Dear John and Marina, it might be worth bearing in mind that this emptiness that you feel, that we all feel to a greater or lesser degree, is not a condition in itself. Rather, it is an indicator of our own self-absorption and signals a need. It asks something of us, this emptiness, this hollowness. It is a call. It is a call to meaning and a call to love. It requires of us that we reach beyond our own dejection and attend to the condition of the world. And for me personally, this is the gift of the red hand files. And so he uses people's questions to kind of draw him out of his own, nonsense. And don't hear what is not being said here. Like, don't send me letters about depression is a real thing and da-da-da. I know that. I absolutely know that. And everything that he has just said here is also true. Because one of the things that therapists try and get people to do is be of service. Because when you are of service to others, it takes you out of yourself, even for just a short time. So, and that's what he's trying to do with this. And he knows whereof he speaks as well, because he has lost not 1 but 2 children.
Oof.
In the last, I think, 10 years or so. I think one of his sons killed himself, and the other died in a really horrible accident at a cliff in the UK. Fell off a cliff. So he knows what he's talking about when he's when he's talking about sorrow and emptiness and grief. But his writing is beautiful, and again, he kind of puts it out there generously for, as a gift to people. And yes, he makes a living from it, and that's cool.
Yeah.
So he's somebody, and you can sign up for the Red Hand Files. If you just Google the Red Hand Files, they'll pop up. But other writers that I love, or other writing that I love, James Pogson, who has been a friend of the podcast, been on the podcast before.
Hi, James.
Hi, James. He is a poet and a writer, and he writes on LinkedIn about being Black in the UK and being a Black writer and just the general nonsense that he puts up with, but also about the joy in life as well. And he is a really awesome poet and writer. He's been dubbed LinkedIn's Poet Laureate. Absolutely 100% recommend following him on LinkedIn. He's nice. Awesome, really great guy. Then there is Anne Handley, who writes the Total Anarchy newsletter, and I love that name because and she's also a writer. She writes about, she's written a couple of really good books as well, but she just writes about writing and storytelling and marketing and using it all. And she writes a Sunday email, and that's a great one to get on as well, the Total Anarchy newsletter.
Nice.
Yeah. And then just a few people to follow. Joan Didion, obviously read her books. She died recently, which is total shit. But she is one of the best essayists the world has ever seen, I think. Okay. Roxane Gay, another fantastic essayist, feminist writer. Also amazing. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, another novelist and essayist whose work I love. One of my favourite short pieces of hers is on Nigerian food and how she didn't like a very specific thing and just has been mocked for it by her Nigerian family because they're just like, well, you're not real Nigerian then if you don't like this. It's just, but again, that was like a really good exercise in taking the theme of food and widening it out and
to mean something
more than that, about belonging and cultural belonging and where your place is. And so that's, she's awesome. Octavia Butler and N.K. Jemisin for amazing Black female fantasy and sci-fi authors, because women in sci-fi and fantasy anyway are just underrepresented, and especially Black women and women of colour, and just their books are awesome. N.K. Jemisin's Earth series, Stone Sky series is fantastic, and Octavia Butler's parables are just awesome as well. And one of them, do you remember we were reading one of them, and it was just when Donald Trump was like fucking up everything, and it was like I was reading Octavia Butler's book and watching the world burn and being like, fuck. It's like actually happening. So that was alarming. And then of course there's David Sedaris.
Yeah.
Who we went to see live a couple of weeks ago, didn't we?
He was excellent.
I don't think we've done a podcast actually since then, have we?
We went down to London. We had a nice time. We did the touristy stuff.
Yeah.
And then we saw David Sedaris.
Yes. And he's so great because, and this is a thing that he does, right? And this is, okay, so something that he does creativity-wise. He writes columns for The New Yorker, obviously, and he's produced books of essays. He's an essayist. I don't think he's written long-form novels and things. I don't think he has. So he does short essays, and he bases a lot of it on his life and growing up with his family, which is frankly dysfunctional. Yeah. His sister Amy Sedaris, by the way, is hilarious on Instagram. But yeah, all of the writing that he does, before he publishes it, he reads it to people out loud, and that's how he decides whether or not it's going to work, by the audience reaction. Mm-hmm. So he really struggled. He did one Zoom event during the pandemic and really struggled with it because Hugh, his husband, was like, how did it go? And he was like, I have no idea. Just not enough feedback from people. Yeah, because like if people groan, and it's like if people start coughing and sneezing, he knows he's lost people. But he does use his husband as he calls him oh my god, I can't remember what he calls him. Oh, Senator Prude or okay. Congressman Prude, because he will be like, do you have to use language like that? And he'll have used the word bottom or something. It won't even be like... So it's like if Hugh is disgusted by something, he'll be like, that's going to work. That's going to work. So yeah, but he will read stuff to people, and that will be how he decides if it's going to work. And here's another creativity tip from David Sedaris. How long were we in the line to get my book signed? We were in the line to get a book signed. So long that we walked back from the South Bank to Knightsbridge. Because the trains had stopped running. Yeah, so we walked past Buckingham Palace at 1 a.m, which was cool. Yes. Mooned the Queen. I did not moon the Queen. But it was worth it, but it was a long stand around, wasn't it? Yeah, but why were we there for so long? Because he talks to everybody. Does talk to everybody, and I love that. And I love the reason that he talks to everybody. When he was just starting out as a writer, he went to a book signing, somebody whose memoir had come out, and he really admired her and went to the book signing, and she signed his book and thrust it back at him without ever even looking at him. She was having a conversation with somebody else, and it just made him feel like total shit, as it would. Yeah. And so he vowed that he was going to speak to every single person in his book signing lines, and it's just awesome. He says he gets asked a lot, oh, you must be exhausted. He's like, no, I literally get on a train, turn up, speak for an hour, and then I have conversations with people. That's not tiring. And so it's barely like, a job. I'm not a nurse, I'm not. And so he really loves it, but he doesn't he gets the same questions over and over again, which must be really boring. So he doesn't let you ask him questions. Well, I mean, you can ask him questions, but he gets in first and asks you something really random. Like before, the people before, he asked, what's your favourite piece of furniture? Or do you like furniture? Yeah. Well, like, it was just like, and it was like, what? And so there, ended up having... I wish we could see him again so he could ask us that question and we could tell him about my throne chair. The ridiculous chair you just bought. Yeah, which we will come back to in another episode. I'll probably forget. Stay tuned for exciting chair news. It is exciting though. But yeah, so he will ask people questions. And the question that we got was, have you ever met somebody who's truly evil or who you think is truly evil? Mm. And it was like, oh God, I don't know. And I couldn't really think of anything. So I said, well, there was a cat in our village that we called the bad cat. And he found that really funny. So, but yeah, he will ask people things, but then he's always got a notebook by him and he will write these little snippets down. And quite often he will hear something on it, like maybe only one thing per book tour that will then form the basis of one of the stories that he tells. Yeah. And so, that if you take nothing else away from this podcast, take that away. Like, talk to people, ask them weird shit. Don't do small talk. Like, I hate small talk. I'm really shit at it. But I'm also too scared to ask people stupid questions, or I was. And now I'm just going to be like, nah, if I've got a question, it's like, what do you think of emus? I'm just going to ask people. I'm obsessed with emus at the moment. But just ask people weird shit questions and, be really awkward about it. Yeah, winkle the stories out of them. Yeah, because you never know what's going to come out. Like your porridge spinning. That's not a story. That's just what people do with porridge. But it is a story. That's the thing. Tell the listeners about your porridge spinning, your weird family. Well, it's not weird. If you have porridge and you're in a big family and you get porridge in the morning, if your porridge is carefully made and carefully doled out and you treat it right and you pour your milk onto your porridge correctly, then you can get your porridge floating on the milk.
as a single object of porridge floating on the milk in your bowl. And then you can spin your porridge, and you can sprinkle your sugar on your porridge very evenly because you're spinning it whilst it gets sprinkled. And then your objective is to eat as much of your porridge, because at some point your porridge becomes non-buoyant because it's a funny shape because you've eaten it. So you have to now eat your porridge in a very selective and careful way to keep it balanced so that it floats for as long as possible. And the person with the smallest piece of porridge that's still floating wins breakfast. That's just the way it is.
That's a weird Fraser thing.
Well,
We should have the champion porridge spinner.
I don't think so. I think I seem to remember Claire was pretty special with the porridge.
Okay. There's an awful lot of them, by the way.
There's loads of them, yeah.
So yeah, but that's a story. And so, like, talk to people about, like, how do you eat your porridge? Like, ask people stuff. Do you like mushroom sandwiches? Raw mushroom sandwiches? The answer is yes, they're great.
The answer is no, they are not.
Yes, they are. Anyway, so we are running out of time, but I think that is the perfect place to land. Like, gather stories from people. Like, I talk about gathering stories all the time. Have a notebook with you all the time, whatever form it takes. Maybe it's your voice notes on your phone or whatever. But just ask people stuff about themselves. Like, ask them what they think about things. Ask them.
Surprise them. Surprise them with what you ask them. Don't get off the beaten track.
Yeah. So, like, and it takes practice, and you'll feel really awkward at first, but you will have some amazing conversations with people. You really will. And don't be afraid to tackle stuff that is, seen as like, oh, we don't talk about politics or religion at the dinner table. It's like, fuck that. Talk about it, like, in a respectful way, but go into it from a position of curiosity rather than a position, and this is something that I struggle with, go into it from a position, and I will say that.
Telling people they're wrong.
And I do struggle with that. I try not to say to people you're wrong, but, I struggle to come at it. But if you come at it from a position of curiosity, always curiosity, then you will learn the most incredible things and perhaps build understanding and bridges with people who, you violently disagree with. Because there's always common ground. There's always common ground, and you have to look for it. So yes, I hope that this has been useful and interesting, and I've given you a few people to go and follow. Oh, a couple more things. Atlas Obscura, great source of weird stories.
Okay.
Atlas Obscura. It's got a website. It's just basically weird places in the world, but they write a regular newsletter about I think it's a daily email about just weird hidden stories that people don't know. Slightly Foxed magazine and podcast is a literary magazine and podcast. It's produced quarterly, and they they focus on lesser known authors and lesser known books, but that are wonderful. And I've read so many fantastic books because of that podcast and because of that magazine.
That's cool.
The Atlantic and New Yorker, get a subscription to one or both of them and read the articles in there, read the stories, read the essays. They're fantastic. They also have really good crosswords. And the Idler magazine is a new favourite of mine as well.
I do like the Idler, yeah.
Yeah, it's been around for years, and it's like I had only heard of it because from the Slightly Fox podcast, actually, because they interviewed...
I've read quite a bit of the Idler for quite a long time.
Oh, I never had. And like, why would you not tell me about that? Because that's exactly the kind of thing I'd love. But the whole point is like about being idle and giving yourself time to think and be creative and slow down and stop, Western capitalism hustling all the time.
Yeah, stop achieving shit and just actually have a bit of a think once in a while.
Yeah. And so all of those things are worth, they're well worth looking at. So I hope you take some of those away and run with them.
There'll be a list in the show notes.
Yep, there'll be a list in the show notes. All of those things will be mentioned. Thanks, Harriet, for compiling that, because I'm going to totally forget as soon as I turn this off. And coming up next week, we're going to be talking about... I'm going to be swerving wildly in a different direction and talking about why your table of contents is like a burlesque show.
That is quite a comparison.
Yes, makes sense. You'll see.
Okay.
But in the meantime, I have 5 slots per month for my book breakthrough jams. So if you're thinking of writing a book and you're like, I have no idea how to start or where to start, and I've got this idea, is it any good? Rare. Book yourself a book breakthrough jam. I've got 5 of them a month. They are 90 minutes with me on Zoom. I will send you a questionnaire first, detailed questionnaire to get as much info out of you as possible. And then we will get clarity on your book idea. We will get it nailed down. We will go through your reader journey, go through your writer journey, and we will get your book on a page outlined in detail so that when you go away from our call, you know exactly what you're going to write and why you're going to write it every time you sit down to write. It will mean that you never kind of sit down and go, I don't know what to do and I don't know what to do today. Nope, none of that. You also get access to me via Voxer for a whole month after that. So you can just, anytime you have a thought or a problem or a brain fart, you can ping it to me in Voxer and I will be right there on the end of it. And you get a follow-up call 3 weeks later to ask any follow-up questions and clear up any issues. And got payment plans available for that. I only have 5 slots a month. I've only got 2 left for August. And by the time this goes out, there might be even fewer. So get yourself booked in. Yeah. And you can always book if you don't want to, if you're like, I haven't got capacity to do this for a couple of months, that's cool. Stick a deposit down and we'll get you booked in for,
whenever you're
September,
ready.
October, November. And we'll get you hit the ground running. You can find all about that at moxiebooks.co.uk/book breakthrough. And then free stuff that I have is my free writing prompts calendar at moxiebooks.co.uk/calendar.
Works really well, helps build a habit, gives you a topic to get your teeth into every day.
And it's not just like a bullshit, like, oh, what's the definition of creativity? It's like totally random stuff from, what does, I literally can't think of anything now.
Stuff you've pulled out the deep end of your brain.
Yeah, it's stuff that will make you think and get you digging into shit that you may not thank me for initially, but you will later, I promise. And also, of course, you could join my newsletter. So you can go to moxiebooks.co.uk/notes in the margin. Get on my weekly newsletter. And if you've listened to every episode, thank you very much. Email me with your postal address and I will send you something silly. And if you like this podcast,
rate it, share it, tell your friends.
Go to iTunes and subscribe. But yeah, the best thing you could possibly do if you want to help us, and if you want to help this podcast, is send it to somebody else and get them to listen. You can send them to moxiebooks.co.uk/podcast and they can subscribe there.
Nice.
Thank you so much, Joe.
No worries.
Thank you to Podfly for making this awesome. Thank you to Harriet for just organising my life. Thank you to you, dear listener, for listening every week. We really appreciate it. Because otherwise we'd just be screeching into the void.
Which, who knows, maybe we are.
Well, do you know what? I was going to shout out a few people who have told me how much they enjoy the podcast. So Yinka, hi Yinka.
Hi Yinka.
Yinka, my business bestie, thank you so much. You should totally go and follow Yinka on LinkedIn, by the way, because she is incredible at cash flow, lifting up women in business and generally being a wise owl and a wonderful human. Sarah Silva. Hi, Sarah.
Hey, Sarah.
Who else was I going to shout? I've literally forgotten all of the names that I was
You needed a list.
I needed a list. Well, this was an off-the-cuff thing.
Oh, write the list.
And now I'm just like staring blankly at Joe as if that's going to help.
That's the end of the podcast.
We'll be back same time next week. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening. You can find links and show notes on the website at moxiebooks.co.uk/podcast, where you can also sign up for the best daily emails in the multiverse and find loads of free resources to help you write your book. We'll be back the same time next week with more tales from the book writing trenches and the latest on what the tiny sheeps have been up to.